My wife slept with my close friend in our guest room while I was upstairs recovering from surgery. I was in our bed, half drugged from pain medication, with stitches pulling every time I moved too fast. My name is James. I was 37 at the time. My wife, Narita, was 35. We had been married for 9 years. And the man downstairs with her was Sam, my friend of 11 years. A man who had stood near me at my wedding while I promised to build a life with the woman he was sleeping with in my own house. The worst part was not even that I heard them. The worst part was that I called her name, and she did not answer. I texted her, and she did not answer. I tried to get out of bed, but the pain hit so hard that I had to sit on the edge of the mattress, sweating through my shirt, dizzy and shaking like an old man. 20 minutes later, the back door opened. Footsteps moved through the hallway. Then Narita came upstairs carrying a glass of water, with a face so calm it looked practiced. I asked, "Where's Sam?" She said, "He left." I asked, "Why didn't you answer me?" She said, "I didn't hear you." And I believed her. Not because it made sense. Because I needed it to. Before that day, I thought my marriage was boring in the safest way. We had routines. We had bills. We had inside jokes that nobody else laughed at. We had a dog named Percy who went to her when he wanted comfort and came to me when he heard a snack bag open. We had a small house with terrible plumbing, a yard Narita kept saying she was going to turn into a garden, and a savings account we called the escape fund. Not escape from each other. Escape from stress. Medical bills. Job loss. Maybe a better house one day. Maybe IVF, if we ever got brave enough to have that conversation without changing the subject. There was about $64,000 in that account. There was also almost $20,000 in credit card debt in my name. I knew about some of it. Home repairs, medical bills, a balance transfer or two. My credit was better than Narita's, and my limits were higher, so during rough months, we used my cards. She always said, "We'll pay it down together." I believed that too. Then I had surgery. It was not some dramatic life-or-death operation, but it was serious enough that I could not drive, lift anything, or stand too long without feeling like my body was warning me to sit down. For the first few days, Narita helped me shower. That sounds loving until you are the one standing there, weak and embarrassed, needing your wife to help you do basic things. She seemed caring at first. She brought me soup. She changed my bandages. She sorted my medication into those little plastic containers with the days of the week on them. She told everyone, "I'm basically a nurse now." Sam came by a lot during those weeks. At first, I was grateful. He brought groceries. He walked Percy. He fixed a loose cabinet hinge. He sat with me when Narita said she had errands to run. But, looking back, he came over too much. Too easily. Like he already knew the rhythm of my house. That afternoon, Narita told me he was stopping by to drop off something from the pharmacy. I heard him come in. I heard them talking downstairs. Then I heard her laugh. Everyone has different laughs. There is the polite one. The real one. And the one they use when they are trying to make someone feel special. Narita used that third laugh. I had not heard it from her in months. Then the house went quiet. Too quiet. I called for her. Nothing. I texted. Nothing. I told myself I was drugged. I told myself pain medication was making me paranoid. I told myself my wife and my friend would never do something that cruel while I was trapped upstairs. 2 months later, I found out they had done exactly that. And that day had only been the beginning. The truth did not come out because Narita confessed. It came out because our savings account overdrafted. A savings account. I did not even understand how that could happen at first. I logged in expecting some bank error. What I saw made my eyes burn. The escape fund was gone. Not low. Gone. $64,000 had been reduced to $312.84. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Then I checked my credit cards. Nearly $20,000 across 3 cards. Hotels, restaurants, cash advances, electronics, a jewelry store, a wellness retreat, a cabin rental, payment apps to names I did not know, and one recurring charge for a storage unit I had never rented. I walked into the living room holding my laptop. Narita was sitting on the couch with Percy at her feet, scrolling on her phone like it was a normal evening. I turned the screen toward her. I asked, "What happened?" She looked at the laptop. Then she looked at me. Then she sat back slowly, like someone had unplugged her bones. I asked, "Where is the money?" She whispered, "I don't know." That was the first time I felt something inside me go cold. I asked, "Who is Sam to you?" Her face broke before she said anything. She started crying. Not answering. Just crying. For 3 hours I asked questions and got fog. I don't know why. It just happened. I felt lost. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared to tell you. I thought I could fix it. I sat across from her and listened to the woman I had married explain nothing. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since that afternoon upstairs. "Did you sleep with him in our house while I was recovering from surgery?" She covered her mouth. The sound she made was not a word. But it was an answer. I did not yell. I wish I could say that was because I was calm or strong. It was not. My body just shut down. There is a kind of betrayal so complete that anger has to wait its turn behind shock. My wife had cheated with my close friend in our home while I was too weak to walk downstairs. She had emptied our savings. She had put debt in my name. And when I asked why, she could not even give me the respect of a real reason. The next morning, she tried to hug me in the kitchen. I stepped back. She looked wounded, like I had done something cruel. Then she said, "Please don't treat me like a monster." I said, "Then stop making me live in one." That was the last emotional conversation I had with her without a witness, because Narita thought I would collapse. That had always been my role. I was the steady one, the fixer, the one who called the plumber, handled the overdraft fees, negotiated with insurance, made the payment plan, apologized to people for things I did not do, and said, "We'll figure it out." She was counting on we, but there was no we anymore. There was only evidence. So I opened a new bank account at a different bank. I changed my direct deposit. I froze my credit. I requested new cards. I changed every password I could think of. I turned on two-factor authentication. I pulled my full credit reports. Then I downloaded every bank statement, credit card statement, payment app record, email receipt, transfer confirmation, and account notice I could find. While Narita cried in one room, I built a file in another. Then I called a divorce attorney. He was calm in the way people are calm when they have seen every version of human ugliness. He told me, "Do not discuss money with her in person anymore. Text or email only." So I did. And that was when Narita made her first big mistake. She texted me, "I know I used your cards, but I was going to pay it back before you found out." I read it once, then again. Then I forwarded it to my attorney. A few minutes later, she sent another one. "Sam said he would help, but he's not answering me now." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was perfect. Then came the third message. I didn't mean to use the savings. I just kept trying to cover what I already spent. She thought she was explaining herself. She was confessing. My attorney loved her. The next thread was the storage unit. The charge was on my card, so I called the company. They would not tell me much, but they confirmed the unit was under Narita's name, and my card had been used for payment. My attorney requested the records. When the contents later became part of the divorce process, the inventory made me feel sick. Furniture. Designer bags. 2 unopened laptops, boxes of household items I thought we had lost, gifts from Sam, and a small safe. Inside that safe were jewelry receipts, cash withdrawal slips, and handwritten notes from Sam that made me want to scrub my skin off. Narita had not just been cheating. She had been preparing. She was building a little exit nest with my money while I was upstairs, trying not to split open my stitches. The funniest part, if anything in that kind of hell can be funny, was that Sam disappeared the second consequences appeared. He had told her he loved her. He had told her I was holding her back. He had told her they could start fresh. But when my lawyer's letter landed, suddenly he needed space. I did not call him. I did not show up at his door. I did not send the kind of message that would feel good for 5 minutes and hurt me in court later. Instead, I contacted his wife. Because yes, Sam had a wife. He had told Nerda they were separated. He had told her they were done. In reality, they were in marriage counseling and had just refinanced their house. I sent her one message. I'm sorry to contact you like this. I have evidence that Sam and my wife have been having an affair, including in my home while I was recovering from surgery. There may also be financial issues involving money spent on their relationship. I won't send anything explicit unless you want it, but you deserve to know. Quote, she replied 6 minutes later. Send it. So I did. Dates. Hotel charges. Cabin rental. Doorbell camera still showing him entering my house while I was upstairs. Texts where Narita mentioned him. Nothing graphic. Just enough truth to remove his hiding place. What I did not know was that Sam's wife was a corporate attorney. Sam knew, which made his choices even more impressive. While my attorney handled my divorce, his wife turned their separation into a financial autopsy. Later, she told me Sam had been asking her for money, therapy, debt consolidation, getting his head right. Those were the phrases he used. Some of that money paid for hotels with my wife. Some paid for gifts. Some paid for the cabin weekend. Sam's life did not explode all at once. It imploded with paperwork. His wife filed. My attorney subpoenaed records. Her attorney subpoenaed records. Narita panicked. Sam panicked harder. But the part that made everything worse came from Narita's job. She worked for a nonprofit that helped families dealing with medical crises. That detail still makes my stomach turn. While I was reviewing statements, I noticed deposits I did not recognize. At first, they were small. $300, $450, $275. Then they got bigger. $1,200, $2,000. The labels were vague. Reimbursement, client support, mileage, event cash. I emailed Narita and asked what the deposits were. She replied fast. Don't drag my job into this. Those are normal. I stared at that line for a long time because I did not believe her. But I also knew belief was not evidence. My attorney told me to be careful. No accusations I could not support. No emotional emails. No wild claims. So I gathered. Dates. Amounts. Bank records. Messages. Then I found one text she had sent Sam. I borrowed from the wrong place, and I'm freaking out. Borrowed. From the wrong place. I sent everything to my attorney and asked what I should do. He told me that if I believed funds had been misused, I could report it to the organization's compliance contact without adding drama. So that was exactly what I did. I wrote a plain email. No insults. No long story about the affair. No name-calling. I said that during divorce preparation, I had discovered deposits into our marital account that appeared to be from her employer or connected programs. I said I could not verify their purpose. I said that because the organization served vulnerable families, I felt obligated to notify them. Then I attached the documents. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Narita started acting like maybe she could still control the story. She cried to mutual friends. She told people I had become unstable after surgery. She said I was paranoid. She said money stress had changed me. She used words like controlling and financially abusive. I heard it secondhand from people who suddenly wanted me to be fair. Fair. That word sounded different after I saw a cabin rental on my card from the same weekend she told me she was helping her cousin. I did not argue with anyone. I kept building the file. Then Narita came home early one afternoon. Her face was white. Not pale. White. She walked into the kitchen, dropped her bag on the floor, and said, "What did you do?" I closed my laptop. I asked, "What happened?" She screamed, "You know what happened." I did not answer. She said I was vindictive. She said I was trying to ruin her life. She said I had no idea what I had done. I said, "Neither did you, apparently." Her hand moved before I could react. A mug hit the wall near the doorway and shattered. Percy bolted under the table. That was the last time I stayed in that house with her. I called my attorney. He told me to leave and document everything. So I packed 2 suitcases, took my work laptop, grabbed Percy's leash, and moved into my brother's spare room. Yes, I took the dog. No, I do not feel bad. Narita did not even notice Percy was gone until the next day. The investigation at her job found what I had suspected but could not prove alone. She had been manipulating reimbursement requests in short-term assistance disbursements. Not millions. Not some movie villain scheme. But enough. Enough to get fired. Enough to be reported. Enough to damage every lie she had been telling about being a confused victim of feelings she could not control. Her defense was stress. My attorney's response was simple. His client was upstairs recovering from surgery while she was downstairs, creating much of that stress herself. The judge did not enjoy her. The credit cards became one of the biggest issues in the divorce. At first, Narita claimed the charges were household expenses. So we matched them. Hotel dates with Sam's visits. Restaurant charges with texts. Jewelry purchases with items found in the storage unit. The cabin rental with pictures she had stupidly saved in cloud storage connected to our shared home computer. The wellness retreat turned out to be a couple's spa weekend. I had been home with a surgical drain. She had been drinking cucumber water in a robe with my friend. Some facts are so ugly that nobody has to exaggerate them. In mediation, she tried to apologize. She sat across from me with her attorney beside her and said, "I'm sorry, James. I don't know why I became this person." I looked at her hands. No ring. No trembling. Just fingers folded neatly like she was waiting for sympathy to arrive. I said, "That's between you and whoever still believes you." She blinked like I had slapped her. But I was done donating comfort to people who had already spent everything else I had. The settlement was brutal for her, but it was fair. The house was sold. From the proceeds, I received the first portion to cover my separate documented contributions and the credit card debt assigned to her. She took responsibility for the cards she admitted using. She waived any claim to my retirement. She got no spousal support. The storage unit contents were sold, and her portion went toward repayment. She had to sign a sworn statement about the debts because my attorney wanted protection if creditors came sniffing around later. Sam's wife was even more efficient. She used the affair spending, the lies, and the money trail to carve him up financially. He lost the house. He lost most of their shared friends. He lost the good guy going through a hard-time costume he had been wearing for everyone. But even after the paperwork started burning around them, Narita and Sam tried to control the story. According to them, I was unstable after surgery. Depressed. Controlling. Cruel. Sam was just supporting a friend. Narita was trapped. I knew exactly how that kind of lie worked. It did not need everyone to believe it. It only needed enough people to hesitate. Enough people to say there are two sides. Enough people to keep inviting them to brunch, because accountability would make the table awkward. So I made one document, a timeline. No insults. No dramatic commentary. Just dates and evidence. Surgery date. Recovery restrictions. Doorbell camera stills. Hotel charges. Savings withdrawals. Credit card statements. Storage unit records. Texts admitting card use. Texts mentioning Sam. The employer investigation outcome, limited only to what was already documented. Divorce filing date. Settlement terms I was legally allowed to disclose. I did not post it online. I did not send a group blast. I only sent it to people who contacted me, repeating their version. The message was always the same. You asked what happened. Here is the documented timeline. Please do not contact me about them again. That document traveled without my help. Narita's mother called me crying. She said, "Why would you humiliate her like this?" I held the phone away from my face for a second and looked down at Percy sleeping near my feet. Then I said, "I didn't cheat on a man recovering from surgery. I didn't empty a savings account. I didn't use stolen sympathy as a retirement plan." She hung up. That was fine. A lot of people disappeared after that. Some apologized. Some tried to stay neutral. I learned that neutral usually means, "I believe you," but saying it out loud would cost me something. So I let them go too. About a year later, I got a letter connected to Narita's former employer. Because of the investigation and repayment process, some recovered money was being returned to programs affected by her misconduct. I was not the victim in that part. Those families were. Inside the envelope was a copy of a note from the new director thanking the people who came forward. I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not because I missed Narita. Not because I felt sorry for Sam. Because for the first time, all the damage had turned into something that stopped more damage. I still have surgery scars. Tiny pale lines near my abdomen. For a long time, they reminded me of being trapped upstairs while my wife and my friend betrayed me downstairs. Now they remind me that I survived 2 recoveries at the same time. The physical one. And the one where I had to cut out 2 people I loved before their rot reached the rest of my life. Narita lost her marriage, her job, her reputation, her safety net, and the version of herself where she was just a confused woman who made mistakes. Sam lost his wife, his home, and every mutual friend who still owned a spine. I lost money, trust, sleep, almost my mind. But I kept my name. I kept Percy. I kept my future. And I learned the most expensive lesson of my life. Never let someone put debt in your name just because they once put a ring on your finger. Looking back, what still hurts is not just what they did. It is how quiet the house was while it happened. The silence upstairs. The silence after every lie. The silence from people who wanted the truth to be less uncomfortable. But in the end, I stopped filling that silence for everyone else. I let the proof speak, and for once, it said everything I had been too broken to say. If this story had you angry from the surgery room to the final timeline, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Would you have sent the evidence or walked away quietly?